Hello students, I hope you all are doing great. So in this lecture, I will speak on how does Aristotle define tragedy in the 6 chapters of the Poetics. So let's begin. Aristotle's Poetics is mainly devoted to the consideration of tragedy in all its aspects and constituent parts. Chapter 6 to chapter 22 and chapter 17 out of 26 are devoted exclusively to the discussion of tragedy. Aristotle begins by pointing out that imitation is the common basis of all the fine arts, which, however, differ from each other in their medium of imitation, their object of imitation, and their manner of imitation. Thus, poetry differs from painting and music in its medium of imitation. Poetry itself is divisible into epic and dramatic form on the basis of its manner of imitation. The epic narrates while the dramatic represents through action. The dramatic poetry itself is distinguished as tragic or comic on the basis of its object of imitations. Tragedy imitates man as better form and comedy as worse than they really are. In this way, Aristotle established the unique nature of tragedy and differentiated it from other kinds of poetry. Next, Aristotle proceeds to trace the origin and development of poetry. In the beginning, poetry was of two kinds. There was iambis or invitis on one hand and hymns or panegyrists. Panegyrist means a person who praises someone or something, specially in a piece of writing or a formal speech. The first iambis developed into satiric poetry and the hymns or panegyrists into epic or heroic poetry. Out of heroic poetry developed tragedy, and out of satiric came the comedy. As tragedy is a later development, it is therefore a higher kind than the epic. All the parts of an epic are included in tragedy, but those of tragedy are not at all be found in the epic. Aristotle later discusses elaborately the nature and function of tragedy in his Poetics. In chapter 6 of Poetics, Aristotle defines tragedy as the imitation of action, serious, complete, and of certain magnitude in a language beautiful in different parts with different kinds of embellishment through action and not narration, and through scenes of pity, fear, bringing about the catharsis of these emotions. It falls naturally into two parts. The first part, from the imitation of an action and not narration, is concerned with tragedy as one of the imitative poets and points out its medium, object, and manner of imitation. The second part is concerned with the functions and emotional effect of tragedy. First, the definition of tragedy given by Aristotle distinguishes tragedy from other kinds of poetry. Its object of imitation are serious actions, and hence it is different from comedy, which imitates the non-serious action. Secondly, tragedy on the basis of its manner of imitation is distinguished from the epic, which narrates and does not represent through action. Thirdly, on the basis of its medium, it is distinguished from the lyric, It employs several kinds of embellishment, such as figures of speech, decorations, example metaphors, etc. Next, Aristotle examines the plot of tragedy. Tragedy consists of a logical and inevitable sequence of events. The action it imitates is its plot. The action must be complete, that is, it must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Again, the action of a tragedy must be of a certain magnitude. It must be long enough to permit an orderly development of action to a catastrophe. Later on, Aristotle divides the plot of tragedy into two kinds, simple and complex plot. He calls a plot simple when the change in the fortunes of the hero take place without peripety and anagoresis, that is which is also called as discovery, and the plot is complex when it involves one or the other or both. The peripety is the change in the fortune of the hero, and the discoveries is a change from ignorance to knowledge. Aristotle prefers a complex plot. Indeed, Aristotle laid great emphasis on the probability and necessity of the action of tragedy. There must be a causal connection between the various episodes and incident, and they must follow each other naturally. The event must be such as are probable under the circumstances. By various embellishment in various parts, Aristotle means verse and song. Tragedy imitates through verse in the dialogue and through songs in the choric part. As regard the function of tragedy, Aristotle points out that it is to present sense of fear and pity, and thus to bring about a catharsis of these emotions. Having examined the definition, nature, and function of tragedy, Aristotle discusses its formative or constituent parts of tragedy. He enumerates 6 formative elements of tragedies: characters, plot, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. 2 of these parts relate to the medium of imitation, 1 of the manner of imitation, and 3 to the objects of imitations. Song is to be found in the choric parts of tragedy. It is the embellishment which distinguishes the tragedy from the epic. It is one of the sources of pleasure of tragedy. The spectacle has more to do with stagecraft than with the writing of poetry, and so Aristotle is of the view that the dramatist must depend for his effect on his own powers rather than on spectacle. Though it is the intellectual element of poetry and it is expressed through the speech of characters, it is the diction or language which gives us the thought and feeling of various character. As regards characterization in general, Aristotle lays down 4 essential qualities. First, the character must be good. Secondly, they must be appropriate. Third, they must have likeness. And fourthly, they must have consistency. As regards the ideal tragic hero, Aristotle says that he should neither be perfectly good nor utterly bad. The most important constituent of tragedy is its plot. It is the very soul of tragedy. By plot, Aristotle means the arrangement of incidents. Aristotle insists that the tragic plot must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It must be of reasonable size, neither too short nor too long. Such are the main features of Aristotle's theory of tragedy. The theory might have its weakness. Aristotle knew only Greek tragedy. His conclusions are based entirely on the Greek drama, and hence his views are often not of universal application. But despite all its weakness, Aristotle's theory of tragedy is the foundation on which all subsequent discussion on tragedy are based. So here I am concluding my lecture. If you have any queries regarding this lecture, you can comment down your queries in the comment section. And if you think this video gave you some information, then please do consider subscribing to my channel, liking this video and sharing this video among your friends so that I get motivated to make more such videos. Thank you.